Jamie, hello.
Good day, Greg. It's so great to see you. Hello,
Hey, you
everyone.
too. How you doing? How's it going?
I'm well, thank you. I'm up here in Port Townsend, Washington. So the weather right now is sunny, and we've been playing outside a lot. So pretty grateful for that. Thanks. How are you doing?
Excellent. Good, good. Jamie, right on cue. I was explaining that you're a pretty happy-go-lucky person, and you just came right out with like the high energy. So I love it.
Yeah, well, I think water polo has also taught me that key of resilience. And so you get to choose and I know we'll talk about this. You get to choose how you feel. So not that I'm always feeling happy. It's just simply I do also choose to, well, think the way I think. Yeah.
Sure, sure. And because there has been so little water polo to play right now, people don't have access to the pools. Their games are scheduled. We all have a chance to maybe be in our head a bit more than we wanted to because we have all this extra time and we're not competing. We're not doing those sorts of things. I know we have a couple of topics that we want to get into, but just kind of give folks a little bit, kind of the summary version of how you went to water polo player full time to where you're at now.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was water polo full time, I actually blended into the health and fitness community while I was finishing playing with the USA, the Olympic team. And I started teaching yoga and spin and Pilates. And when I was training, I had so many injuries, shoulder surgeries, hip surgeries, concussions. I just had a lot going on. And I really wasn't taking as great care of my body as I think I could have, and my mind and my spirit. And so I really went on my own adventure of learning how to care for myself, and at the same time how to help others do the same for themselves. So whether to prevent injury, whether to prevent nutritional fatigue, or actually our mental fog, and help us just have the most positive mindset possible and resilient mindset possible. So I dove into every certification: yoga, spin, Pilates, nutrition, coaching, and I've just loved and created my own business around happy vibes, how we can live a fulfilling life on our terms and in a way that is wholeheartedly you. So you're being authentically you. You're not doing anything, that doesn't feel on the expectations of others. You're honing in on following your heart. So that's just what I'm so passionate about: teaching, coaching, speaking on, and tying in my passion for happy vibes bracelets. So these are setting bracelets, and that's really how I came to be here. Just following my heart, and putting aside the inner critic enough to do so.
And we've talked with so many people over the last couple of weeks, and for those that are watching, and for those that will watch this, I think our talk here with Jamie. We talked with Cami Craig, one of your former teammates, who's a Rise mentor. We talked with Brian Alexander, who does kind of the mental skills approach for the Olympic Development Program. Chris Bates, the athletic trainer. Kind of this is, and it kind of speaks to your journey. Everyone is fair to kind of take what works for them, right? So this is another chance to kind of hear a different approach that you kind of settled in. And it's funny, as you were rattling off all those things, I just know from having gotten your emails over the years that you really have tried out a bunch of different things to kind of figure out what works best for you. And now it sounds like you kind of settled on something that you're kind of comfortable with, bringing together all those things that you've learned over the years. The first thing I kind of want to jump into is, and just kind of going off some of the things we talked about previously, is this idea of the inner critic that you were talking about, the idea of kind of approaching that negative self-talk. And I think we all deal with this, whether you're a high-level athlete, whatever it is you're trying to do, you're often your own worst critic. What's been your kind of approach to manage that and work with it and through it?
Yeah, well, I think there's so many different ways, and what's important, as you nailed it, it's important to figure out what works for you, because what's going to work for me may be different for you listening on this. So I'm going to share some ideas, and so feel free to take what you want and put it in your toolbox of awesomeness, right? So there's a couple approaches that I love to take, and they're playful, they're light. What's important is that I honor all that I'm feeling and not pretend that I don't have those feelings, that inner critic doesn't exist. Because I tried that for many years and that just doesn't work. it just builds up and then it gets kind of crazy. So I'd love to share, what do you think? A couple ideas?
Sure, yeah, that's great.
Okay. So a playful way to approach your inner critic is to name it. Name your inner critic. And that way you detach yourself from your thoughts and actually distinguish the difference and clarify the difference between, this is these are my thoughts and this is who I am, because you're not defined by your thoughts, but sometimes we feel like we are. And so my inner critic's name's Jerry. There you go. Yeah, Jerry. And so when I have a really nervous moment, or when I'm about to do some public speaking, or say before a big game, I mean, I didn't know Jerry was named Jerry when I was playing, but in the same capacity, if I feel nervous about something, I'll literally be like, dude, Jerry, step aside for a moment. Get over there. I need to focus on what I need to focus on, and let's tune in. Thank you. I'll see you later. Yeah.
I love that idea, and I'm laughing in my head, and this is going to be an inside joke, but if you watch the show Parks and Recreation, they're having like a special reunion episode tonight, and the character that was always like getting in the way was named Jerry. So it's funny that that's like the name of your person over here, because they're always just like, oh, Jerry, like you've ruined this good moment, like you step over here while we enjoy. That's interesting, and I think it's a helpful thing to point out, right? Because we all have that voice, or that thing that kind of comes up. And so you identify it, right, to your point, but then is it and maybe this sounds silly to some, right, but is it kind of like a self-talk thing? Like, how are you working through that voice in your head that you're hearing to get it to quiet down enough, or to do something else so that you can accomplish the thing you want to accomplish?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to also acknowledge that while we do have these maybe negative thoughts, that we do have the ability neurologically to shift to positive self-talk. So we want to be able to, we can shift the way we think. We can even change our neurological brain matter by choosing positive thoughts. So even if I hear myself choose a negative thought, like I'm just like, oh man, Jamie, geez, you're going to mess this one up, right? Then I can say, yes, I hear you. I acknowledge this, and I choose something else. I choose to believe, and I flip it. So I say, I choose to believe that I can do this, that it is possible. So you have to actually hear yourself think it, and then be able to pause and say, okay, I hear that. I acknowledge it. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't exist. And then I'm going to choose something different, though. And that's the power of choice, right? And we sometimes forget that we actually have a choice in the matter.
Next week for our at-home series, our theme is Spirit Week, and one of the days is Superhero Day, where everyone can dress up as their favorite superhero. I know in your work you talk about the superpower of curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the superpower of curiosity. There's a quote that I just love to share. It says, by replacing fear of the unknown with curiosity, we open ourselves up to an infinite stream of possibility. And if you see in the background, actually, you might be able to see, there's some photos there of my travels. And I love traveling the world. It's just one of my passions, and tie into what I do and what I speak about. And I feel like, if you've gone somewhere new, you've had a new experience, we tend to be curious about it. We're like, oh, what's this about? Right? It doesn't always go right. Sometimes our luggage is lost. Sometimes our flights are delayed. We lose all our clothes, whatever it may be, but it ends up being an adventure. So if we can make life a little bit more of an adventure and approach it with curiosity, then it allows us to shift from that place of fear and become more intuitive, curious, and less judgmental of ourselves and of others. So I think that that's really helpful, whether we're preparing for a game, whether we're training, whether we're comparing ourselves to others, or whether we're kind of figuring out, okay, what's next for me,
We're talking with Jaime Komer here, past member of the Women's National Team 2008 Olympian, and talking about her Happy Vibes series and some of the good pieces of information she's picked up along the way, and now stuff that she shares. She's doing weekly webinars and chats and all kinds of other good stuff. We were talking about some of the kind of principles that you address in some of your talks and some of your speaking series, and you kind of touched on it a bit, but the idea of kind of processing your emotions. And water polo is an emotional sport, no matter what your position, right? There are these highs and lows, and there's such an exertion of energy, and then maybe something doesn't go the way that you want it to go, even though you've worked so hard to make that thing happen. How do you process emotions in moments like that and elsewhere in life?
Yeah, well, I think we all know, anyone who's watching this, I'm imagine, when you're playing, when you're in the moment, if you're in the zone, when you're in that player zone, you're not thinking about what just happened. And me as a goalkeeper, when I was thinking about, if I was thinking about what just happened, then I would probably get scored on again, and it would not go over as well. So when I am in the zone, though, it's, I'm present in the moment and I'm not worried about what's going to happen or what's not going to happen. And we all know that feeling. It just feels so fresh and so yummy and delicious. And I think it really ties to a few things. Is one, the more we tune into what we are feeling and what we are sensing, and allowing it, let's use the comparison of water. Allow it to flow through us versus pretending it's not there, because that's where it just gets built up and stuck up in our bodies physically, literally. So let's let it flow through us, acknowledge it, and say, you know what? I am really upset about this. Wow, I do really feel embarrassed about that. All right, okay, fine. I'm human. Let it pass. Now what's next? Now let's move forward. So that's how I like to approach it.
You talked about the position of goalkeeper, and there probably isn't a position that requires more resiliency in the sport of water polo, where you really have to kind of move on from the next moment. You just said it, right? If you were always thinking about the last play, you probably would allow the next shot and the shot after that. It's funny. Do you think that, all along you kind of were built for this line of work that you're in now because you chose a position in the pool that kind of just required the ability to kind of be resilient and bounce back and kind of be able to kind of connect with everyone else?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I literally speak to, high level athletes, teams, organizations, and speaking about performance and speaking about high pressure situations. So talk about a high pressure situation, right? Being a goalkeeper is just like you're setting yourself up for either the what we deem as failure or success. And that is a lot of pressure. So it does require this little bit of resilience, and also ability to let it either, shake it off, or otherwise you just let it build up, which I did to a certain extent. And that's what I learned from, though. We learned from those challenges. It's not all, perfect. I learned from my mistakes too, quite a bit, and enough to be able to speak about now. Yes. So it really did, when I look at my story, yeah, everything's come together, even though it may not have made sense along the way.
Yeah, it's I think every athlete, especially at a high level, they find their journey maybe isn't always how they thought it was going to go. They got to where they wanted to be, but they couldn't have predicted how they would get there, right? As you described, you're right there in that space as well. Just kind of looking through some of the other stuff that you've talked about and you continue to talk about, the idea of creating your own inner compass, right? Which sounds very useful, but how does that actually happen?
Yeah, right? Wouldn't it be nice to have your own inner compass everywhere? That just would make so much sense. Yeah, well, the inner compass is kind of like, you could deem it as your purpose, your passion, your values, things that help you make decisions. I mean, think about a compass I'm learning how to use a compass because my son, my 3.5-year-old's in outdoor preschool. So I'm learning from him. But, to use a compass to be like, okay, I have a decision of where I want to go. Which direction do I want to take? And the better we know ourselves, essentially, the better we know ourselves, the easier it is to make that decision that's in line with your own truth, your heart, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, that center of alignment for yourself. And we've all gone off course. So let's use that example of being on an adventure again, right? Being curious, and I'm moving forward on an adventure. I'm going on a hike, or I'm traveling, what's going to help me go on the direction that I want to go. So I tune into those purpose piece, the values piece, whatever tools, actual tangible tools that you have, that you've written down, that you've thought about, that actually help you make a decision with whether it's like who I want to be friends with, who, do I want to do my homework right now, or do I want to train right now? Like, just simple decisions, yet it can make a difference,
Totally. We're talking with Jaime Komer here, talking mental wellness, happy vibes, all that good stuff. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them in the comments section. We kind of get to those, and we know a lot of folks will watch this after the fact. We leave these up for 24 hours, then we share them on our YouTube page as well. So if you know someone that would want to see this and they can't get to it now, let them know. It will be available down the road, as we'll make sure we share that, reshare it as well. All the stuff you're talking about is great. As we go through it, it makes me think a lot of your audience are full of competitive people, whether it's athletes at a high level, you're talking to a business, people want to strive to hit their sales goal or whatever it is they're trying to do at their company. Sometimes when you think about the competitive nature and you're trying to be tough and get things done, the idea of bringing all of this emotion sounds like it could be a distraction, right? What's the challenge, and maybe you dealt with it in your own life and now you speak it to others, but what's the challenge in kind of bringing in all of these, I don't want to call them theoretical things because they're not fit, they're real, but bringing in these feelings, these emotions, these thoughts to these tangible goals. How do they kind of work together?
Yeah. Okay. So how do they work to the tangible goals? Well, I think what comes to mind is Brene Brown is the vulnerability and shame researcher. She has some amazing TED Talks. I highly recommend checking those out. And she speaks a lot about vulnerability in leadership. And so for me to bring up, the concept of emotions or what we're feeling and how that actually ties into elevating your well-being, tuning into your compass and you're performing at your best, because that's really what it's all about, is really, for us to be the best version of ourselves, whether we're in the pool, the workspace, or just in our lives. What I'm finding, and Brene Brown speaks on, is when we tune into ourselves, that does actually help us decide what we actually want to do. It helps us acknowledge and all those limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves that stopped us from moving forward, whether it's in a health goal, I want to get more active, or whether I want to be a better goalkeeper, or I want to do better at school, whatever it may be. So the more we tune into who we are, what we want, it's easier to actually move forward in those goals. And it does require getting a little vulnerable if we're not used to it, which, coming from a professional athlete place, that was really scary and uncomfortable for me. So that took a lot of kind of work there, and which is why I'm passionate about speaking about it, because it does make a difference.
And it's very cool. We just had a comment here that Brene's son and husband play the game of water polo. So that's an awesome connection.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. We're talking with Jaime Komer here, who's no stranger to water polo. Across all these groups you speak to, athletes, folks in business, and it's probably some of the stuff you've touched on, but is there a common through line, something that all the groups are in need of to try and take that next step in what they want to accomplish? Is there something that just relates to everybody?
Yeah. You mean the content that I speak about, or what they
Yeah.
have in common?
Well, as you talk to them, are you finding that there's a concept that you talk about that applies no matter what to everybody across the board?
Yes. Actually, what I've been finding out is actually the concept of identity. Everyone I've been speaking with, this is like groups of women, this is youth, this is professional athletes. It's just vast across the board, is the challenges that we face with our identity, meaning that I'm more than my job. I'm more than being a goalkeeper. I'm more than being an athlete. I'm more than being a mom, whatever it is. We all seem to be questioning. What I'm noticing is, who am I? If I'm not my title, what am I? What's that look like? And I think that's why that piece of the inner compass has been really fun to play with. Yeah.
Well, and now more than ever, I think you're finding people are really asking that question, because if you were always this, and now, and we know folks are suffering through things like job loss, and now you don't have the job that you had, or you play a sport, you can't play the sport that you played. What's the message for folks now that don't have the thing that they so associated their identity with?
Oh, well, I think the first message is, and it's hard to sometimes digest, I realize, but the message really is that you are more than that, and that you have an opportunity. You have a choice to decide who you are. We really do have a choice to decide who we are every moment of every day, with how we speak, what we say, what we do. We may not feel like we have a lot of control of many things going on, maybe right now, but we do have control of our thoughts, our actions, our interactions, what we say and what we do. And that is the power. That's like the power piece right there. And it's right there.
Is there something you've learned now, in your post-playing career? Is there a number one or number two thing you wish you knew back then that you felt like would have helped you either get to where you wanted to be faster or take a bigger step?
Yes, absolutely. I can have a whole list for you, but I'll just just start, because that was my journey. That was the journey I was meant to have. I think honestly, and this is going to bring that emotion piece to it, because I had the motivation, I had the work ethic, I had the strength, the focus. It was actually the self-compassion. I was so hard on myself. I was literally my worst critic, and I was never my biggest fan. And that was so challenging. It was like I was always needing more like positive reinforcement, like, oh, tell me I'm doing that good. Tell me I'm doing good, instead of being like, oh, I got this, great. Or if I made a mistake, oh, okay, it's cool, that was really challenging for me. And I internalized that. So I wish I had known that to treat myself more like, say, a good friend, The way I would treat a good friend was like, you know, it's okay. You made a mistake. It happens. You know,
Yeah.
compared to, and kindly speak to myself kindly instead of with such, you know, self-criticism. You know, there's a fine line there. It pushes you
Sure.
hard, right? To work harder. And though it kind of, you know, can wear you down a little bit. So there, I think I could have brought in a little more self-compassion.
Yeah, yeah. And then, you know, the other side of it, of course, is the physical side, right? And you mentioned injuries and some of that stuff, there's not much you can do about it. But so often, I talk to athletes in multiple sports, and after they retired, they got into something new that they didn't, you know, whether it was yoga or something that improved their flexibility or their fitness. They picked up something and they say, "Oh, I wish I had this," or "I was doing this as a supplement back when I was playing." Do you have one of those things?
Oh yeah, and I do have again a list. So to keep it short and sweet, because I went into yoga and spin and Pilates and these other areas of kind of holistic or full body well being, I suppose. I'd say try doing the cross training, a variety of things. The repetitive action of any movement is going to wear you down, right? The muscles, the tissues. So the way I ate changed actually, having more alkaline foods and more hydrated water. And then also the movement piece, like getting a variety of movement in instead of just the same repetitive thing over and over. Because that is what wore my tissues down. So a lot of natural movement too. I brought in so much natural movement. It was so much fun afterwards. I wish I'd done that when I was playing.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's many people that talk about diet and flexibility and movement that end up being, regardless of the sport you played, end up being something that they wish they worked on earlier. We did get a question in here. What was the transition for you like to leave water polo as an athlete? So to get into the next chapter of your life, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That I was actually already teaching spin and yoga at that time and getting certified in Pilates. I think I knew I don't think I was mentally ready to leave water polo yet, so I was already doing other things, but I just wasn't ready to just let go. But the transition was really challenging. It was tough because I was still in that place of who am I? It was scary for me to leave the identity of being a professional athlete. I loved being a professional athlete for so many reasons. And that and the love of the game. And so that it was tough. I found it really helpful though to put my energy into things I love, not just things I feel like I have to do or not just to make money, but it was things I love. And that was really helpful. And also it was really helpful to get support, talk to people about it. When I did choose to talk to people about it, it was really helpful. Yeah.
Talking with Jaime Komer here. So many of our viewers and fans and members, they're really missing the game and they're kind of missing that bond, being around their teammates. You've been out of this for a little while competitively, where you were training every day with a team. But what, you know, as you think back on that, what do you remember about those moments? What do you love so much about being part of the team?
Oh, I love that. I love that you had this bond that was deeper than anything. It was as deep as family in a way. It was because you're together. You know, it's not like you choose your family. You're there. You're together, and you have this automatic just respect for each other. And it the toughest part I think for training for the Olympics was literally training for the Olympics. You know,
Yeah,
it's the every day in and day out. So to have that support when the days when I didn't want to get up, I knew I was getting up also for my teammates, or when, you know, I saw my friend's face that, you know, they were having a tough day, that I was able to be there to support them, and vice versa. So I think it was having that support system was so key. I don't know how, you know, individual athletes, Olympic athletes do it, honestly. I mean, I hope that they surround themselves with so many people, because I think having a team provides that strength for you and that foundation. So you have people to lean on. And we need people to lean on.
yeah, especially now, and we've talked about it with so many people. But when you're not having that person-to-person contact, you know, maybe you're with your family in quarantine, that sort of thing. But our social networks in person are usually so much bigger than they are right now. And so, and I'm sure you found this too, it's important for people to reach out and just force those connections, a phone call, a FaceTime, an email, to stay in touch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like I go a little crazy if I don't do that. I mean, that's why I love what I do. individual one-on-one coaching or workshops or speaking. And now I'm taking it virtual because I missed that connection. I'm like, let's talk, everybody. I'll ask questions. Let's bring this, let's come together. So yeah, you need that. I mean, that's actually part of your well-being too. I mean, if we're talking about well-being, that's one of these kind of bits and pieces on the wheel of well-being that really impact other areas of your life.
What's that moment like? And it probably is not as instantaneous as the ending of a game and you winning something, but in your current work now, when you're able to kind of see that progression, someone that you've been coaching, a talk that you've given, and what you have offered has made a difference. What is that moment like for you?
Oh, that's like one of the best moments ever. And the way it looks like now is instead of me telling you what to do in my work, I usually actually ask questions. So talk about that curiosity piece. I ask questions to facilitate that self-learning experience for you. So you actually bring out your own intuition and your own inner knowledge. So it usually happens when I ask a question and there's this silence and it's like, oh, I haven't looked at it like that. And then the person has this aha moment by something that they say or the way they're answering the question. And I'm not giving them the aha moment. They're creating that aha moment for themselves. And you can just tell that there's just this shift of perspective of, wow, I thought my life was like this, but now I'm seeing it like this. And now I see all these opportunities for myself. And now I feel like this about myself. So yeah, you can literally feel the energy just change and hear it in their voices. It's pretty ridiculously awesome.
Oh, it's very cool. Very cool. Jaime, if folks want to get in touch with you, they want to maybe watch some of the things you're doing or kind of reach out as far as coaching, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Follow me here on Instagram, Jaime Komer. Go to my website, Jaime Komer, spelled the same way. You can sign up for my newsletter there. That's where I share the videos that I have too and the collaborations that I do. And then you can also see the Happy Vibes bracelets on this website as well. So that's probably the best way to do. Newsletter, website, here on Instagram.
And then just a couple of last things for you here.
Yeah.
You touched on some of the workouts you're doing. We get this question all the time, so we're asking pretty much everybody. Yeah. What are things you can do to kind of keep your fitness up when you have no access to a pool?
Oh, okay. Mix it up, get outside. If you have a tree, literally just hang on the tree or jump around, like kind of pull up tree, lean, it doesn't have to be a structured, like I dare you and challenge you to get out of the structure of just up and down, but from side to side, move around and one arm sideways, like literally just change how you normally do something. And you're going to work all these other little awesome little muscles that need it and want it. So use what you have around you, kind of think parkour style. So if you're more into rolling, parkour it. And I mean, I've never actually tried parkour. It looks like the hardest, awesomest thing ever. So hats off to people who do parkour. So I highly suggest mix it up, kind of get a little edgy with it. I bet there's some amazing YouTube videos out there for parkour and things like that. Try it.
Very nice. All right. We've got a lot of recommendations in 6 weeks. You're the first with parkour, so I love it.
Yes.
Thanks for doing that. And then last question for you, because you've lived this journey as well. You know that we have 2 Olympic teams training that were so close to the teams being named, and now they find out it's pushed back a year. You've lived that quadrennial life. It's probably stuff you've already talked about, but for those athletes, the ones that have to now put their head back down for another 12 months to get to where they want to be, what's a message to kind of keep them, keep their inner critic at bay, or any of that stuff that might be kind of creeping in now that they have an additional year to work on achieving their goal?
Yeah, it's like I wish I could say something that just makes it all make sense and feel okay, and everyone feels warm and fuzzy and happy inside and feel happy vibes, right? And it's like you kind of have to go through this. I imagine a grieving and a mourning period of like, this is real and this is happening, and I have another year of this, and I can't take that away as much as I would just want to make it easier for people. So I think what comes to mind for me is really you have the answers inside of you and really tuning into your heart. So whatever it is for you that helps you nourish yourself at this time. So journal, talk to a friend, and look, and then reassess the situation, maybe from curiosity. So what would it look like to shift from a place of whatever you're looking at the situation now to a place of curiosity? What's possible from this place? What's possible for me? What am I learning about myself from this? And that might help just provide some perspective, some awareness, I hope.
Yeah. No, it's a tough one, but I think a lot of these things you've talked about could be helpful to even the most elite athlete. Like we're talking about ones that are facing a postponement here. Jamie, always fun to talk with you. Thanks so much for taking some time here, and really appreciate you stopping by.
You too, Greg. So great to chat with you, and thank you, everyone.